Hi, welcome to today's video. My name is Paul. So this week, again, the chance to do a bit of charcoal landscape drawing. Usually I use white paper with these charcoal drawings, but I've run out of white paper. I don't have any left. I can't afford to buy any more at the moment, so I've had to sort of improvise a bit. Maybe that's one of the themes, unintentional themes maybe, of this video this week. There's a quote, I think it's by Picasso, I can't remember the exact quote, but something like the idea of, he said if he was ever locked up in a dungeon and he didn't have access to any drawing materials or painting materials, he would still try and draw pictures with his finger in the dust on the floor. And it's that sort of idea that nothing's going to stop him from doing art. It's an idea that I like, and it's an idea that I want to try and live by myself. So the fact that I don't have any white paper, I'm not going to let that stop me from doing these charcoal landscape drawings. So I had to sort of improvise a bit, and I did find this old, I guess, drawing book or sketch pad. It's by a company called Daler-Rowney. I think it's an English company, and it's basically the paper is designed for soft pastels. And in fact, on the other side of this sheet of paper is an old drawing in soft pastel. I didn't like it, so I thought, well, I'll just flip it over and use the back of the paper to do a charcoal drawing. Last week I talked about experimenting a little bit and trying to add a bit of color into these charcoal landscape drawings. This week, I guess, is kind of following on from that, even though it may be unintentional. This time, there's no color being added, but the paper I'm using is colored. I don't know how the final result will look. As I say, I will lose that stark contrast that you get with the white paper, but maybe the colored paper will add something. I should also say this video this week is pretty much unedited. I thought it might be interesting for people to see the whole drawing process. Remembering that I don't use any references, so my drawing process is different, quite different from people who use photographic reference, for example, or if you go out into the countryside and draw landscapes from nature. It's going to be a different process. Those, when you're using references or you're painting from nature, it's maybe a more linear process. You have something to base your final picture of. And in fact, people who tend to copy photographs, every little detail, it is very much a linear process, I think, because you're just transferring shapes from a photograph onto piece of paper or canvas or whatever you're using. But when you're drawing from imagination like I'm doing here, it is just coming out of your head. There's nothing to base it off. So it is, I think of it as a less linear process. What I mean is I do certain things and then I change my mind and redo them and rework things. So that's what I mean when I say non-linear. Charcoal is a good medium for doing that because it allows you to rework it over and over again. It's something that you can't really do with, say, watercolor. Once you put it down, that's kind of it, really. You can mess around with watercolor a bit, but certainly not the way you can with charcoal. The other sort of thing I want to talk about this week was an artist that I've known about her for quite a while, but I'd sort of forgotten about her a bit. Her name was John Eley. Technically, I guess she was an English artist. She was born in England and grew up in London, but she's often more associated with Scotland, and you will see, if you do a bit of research on her, you'll see people referring to her as a Scottish artist. I think that's just because she went to art school, the Glasgow School of Art in Scotland, and then I think pretty much stayed in Scotland for the rest of her life. And she's most associated with doing, say, Scottish landscapes. She's also She probably first became famous for doing portraits and figure work. As I say, she lived in Glasgow as a student. Glasgow is not the capital city of Scotland. Edinburgh is the capital, but Glasgow is maybe actually slightly larger in terms of population and the size of the city. And Glasgow is quite different from Edinburgh, whereas Edinburgh is more historic and has more, I guess, sort of tourist attractions in terms of its history and old buildings and castle and things like that. Glasgow is more, I'm trying to find a diplomatic word, maybe a little bit rougher around the edges. It's more of an industrial city. There are, I'm sure, nice parts of it, but it does, the few times I've visited, it does come across as more of an industrial city. And in the past, like most big industrial cities, it had rich areas and not so rich areas. And it was from those not so rich areas that John Eley sort of painted and sketched young children. And I think that's where she really first became famous. But her landscapes are also amazing. I think they're very inspirational for me. Her style of doing landscapes. It's difficult to explain, but I'll try and remember to put a link in the description box below if you want to go and check out her landscape paintings and drawings. They're certainly very, very interesting, and they're quite loose and a little bit abstract, I guess, but very interesting. Unfortunately, Joan is one of those artists who died young, so we never really got to see, her full potential, sort of thing. In that sense, she was maybe like, other artists like Vincent van Gogh, who died young. Georges Seurat, the French sort of neo-impressionist, he died quite young as well. A whole bunch of artists who died young, and we never got to see what they could really achieve. In terms of this drawing, you can see me just using a kneaded eraser there, just to try and lift off some of the charcoal in the foreground to create this sort of layered effect. It creates a sort of an effect of maybe vegetation in the foreground kind of thing. I also sort of use that sort of stippling or effect that you can see me doing now. I like to use this to break up the blocks of charcoal so that it looks a little bit more impressionistic, maybe. At least to me, that's how I think of it. Overall, as I say, it was a bit of an unplanned experiment, but I kind of like this greyish blue paper and the final result. And I enjoyed doing the actual drawing itself. So, as I say, this drawing pad, I have a few more old drawings in soft pastel that I don't really like, so I'll try using the back of those bits of paper as well, just to create some more. The pad itself has, I think it's about 5 or 6 different colours, and then there's about 5 or 6 sheets of paper for each colour. So some of the other colours are maybe more reddish or earthy tones. Well, if you made it this far in the video, as usual, thank you for watching, thank you for listening to me. As I say, I'll try and remember to put a link to John Eley's artwork in the description box below. And other than that, hopefully see you in next week's video.